Well, thanks for everyone's patience as we got everything set up in the room. With the change in meeting time, we had a conflict with a week-long session that was going on at Public Works. So I appreciate your flexibility in coming to this location and for our team getting everything set up in here. The first thing that we have on our agenda for today is the selection of the committee chair and vice chair. This is a carryover from our last meeting. We wanted to give folks time to digest what those roles would look like and who might be interested in serving in that capacity. I'd like to just give a quick reminder that, of course, as staff, we're here to support you. So if ever someone's not sure exactly as the chair or vice chair, we can certainly step in and help in that regard. So wanted to see if anyone thought about the opportunity and if they were interested in serving in that capacity.
Don't all speak at once, okay?
The uncomfortable silence.
Or maybe we'll start even with questions if folks have questions about the role too. That might be the way to get the conversation started.
Yeah.
Has anyone served in these capacities before, maybe with another committee or with some different work that they've done? I'm also looking at my screen to see if our online folks are unmuting or raising a hand as well. Okay. Well, we certainly can continue to have the discussion if anybody's willing to step up, but I certainly don't want to spend too much meeting time pausing because I know that there's a lot of information that we'd like to share with you in order to provide just a good foundation of our financial outlook starting today. And maybe I'll do some outreach between now and our next meeting to kind of just chat with folks and get their thoughts about these two roles. That way we can keep the momentum going. So Rick, I don't know if you've got all of your stuff up and ready. I know we're in a different location, so it takes a little time. You ready to kick it off?
You put on screen?
Yep, I will.
All right.
So this will be our first part of the financial outlook presentation.
Good afternoon, Public Safety Citizen Committee. Happy to be before you to talk about some financial outlook for the city of Flagstaff. Today we're going to go big picture as far as the city of Flagstaff. Myself, I am the Management Services Director and serve as the City Treasurer. I've been the City Treasurer for the last 10 years. I've been with the city for 30 years. I have an amazing team, and this organization has amazing staff to deliver budgets and operations across the organization. So today we're going to touch on the color of money, maintaining fiscal health, a lot of policies related to various areas, our revenue resource toolbox, as well as a city-wide budget overview. The next meeting we'll start diving down deeper. We'll start getting into general fund, which is where a lot of expenditures are related to police and fire, emergency management. We'll get into the Water Protection Infrastructure Fund, which is where our wildland fire crew is funded, as well as our airport fund, where our aircraft rescue and firefighting operations are. So we're starting big pictures, and then we're going to start diving down into details as we go through. I'll try to remember to pause between sections and see if you have questions, but if you do have any questions, raise your hands. And Shannon, if you could watch for those hands, I'd appreciate it.
Yep.
So the next slide. So first, we're going to talk about the color of money. This is one important step that's really important to understand for a city. We operate over 50 funds in our city. And when we tax, collect revenues, have fees and charges, they're really gathered for specific purposes for many of our funds. And so we want to make sure that we're using those funds restricted for its purpose. And so we set up several funds to assure that we're managing taxpayer monies appropriately. So we want to talk about color of money because there's many times you may hear like, well, why can't we use the money for this to do fire services? Well, because that money came from a different tax, a different resource. You can't really cross funds that way. So it's important to lay out the structure that we have. So we have, I think I already talked through this slide, right? You have that one up?
Mm-hmm.
50 different funds. Yep, next slide. I had a different one on my screen. No, that's right. It's a new process trying to be in a new location. So we have several fund types at the City of Flagstaff, and with each fund type, there are several funds that we manage. Our special revenue funds are things like our BBB taxes, our libraries, and those things. Enterprise funds are more of a business type activity. Capital project funds are areas where we fund specifically for capital projects in the city. Debt service funds to pay debt, some obligations that we have, as well as our general fund, which is our largest operating fund of the city. And we're going to go through these one by one. Our special revenue funds are used to account for revenues that are derived from specific taxes or fees or revenues. They're earmarked resources to deliver services in these areas. They are usually required. No, you got a little echo. And now worse.
I'm trying to go between two different screens.
I think you got it.
Sorry.
Okay.
There we go.
Usually there's state statute requirements that require us to leave these in certain funds and use charter provisions, ordinances, taxpayer approval authority requires to use them for specific functions. In the special revenue fund, we have a lot of special revenue funds. Housing and community services primarily grant funded. This is where our FHA, our HUD programs, our CDBG, community block development programs are located for housing. Our library fund, we operate our local libraries as well as several other libraries in the county area. These are covered by secondary property tax funds that the county collects and passes on to the city, as well as general fund transfers for our local libraries, the downtown and East Flag libraries. Our highway user funds, that's our gas tax that we receive, a proportionate share back from the state. They collect it all and remit to us, but there are very strict guidelines of what we could use those funds for in our highway user revenue funds. Transportation taxes are several funds that we went to the voters to ask for approval to tax our community. Sales tax, it's currently 1.486 for 4 areas of our transportation tax. And again, these are restricted for those uses. Our transit tax is our most recent one that was approved. That's a 0.5%. Road repair and street safety is 0.33%. Lone Tree overpass is 0.23, and transportation improvements is 0.426. We'll show you kind of the expiration dates. These expire over different times. We'll show you that later as we talk about sales taxes. Next slide. Then we have a group called the Bed, Board, and Beverage funds. There's several funds that we have. We just received approval to extend this tax, and we appreciate the voters for that. We receive a 2% tax on specific categories in our sales tax. That's our hotel, motel, restaurants, short-term rentals, as well as our restaurants and bar. So you pay additional 2%, and we restrict those for these 5 purposes. The taxes to support our beautification and our projects, our economic development team, our tourism, very important to bring revenues into our community. Arts and science, as well as recreation for recreation projects and maintaining of projects. The next one is our park flag. That is a fee-based program where your fees at your meters downtown support this program. And those are strictly used for park flag opportunities. Then we have the water resource and infrastructure protection fee. That is a fee that's on our municipal bill that council had approved and restricted for the purpose of wildland fire management. So that is another special revenue fund that we have. Next is our enterprise fund groups. These are business type activities, usually self-supported through user fees, charges, and those types of revenue opportunities. All these fees are restricted by use by ordinances. Our water, we have water, wastewater, and trash charges, rents, airport leases, and fees all included within these types of user fees. The funds included in enterprise funds is the water, wastewater, reclaimed water, stormwater. That makes our water services group. Usually we just talk water services, everything water. Then we have our solid waste, which is our trash and landfill, sustainability, environmental management, our airport fund, as well as our Flagstaff Housing Authority. That is actually an arm of the city of Flagstaff. Next slide. Then we have our capital project funds. They are used to account for major capital projects, acquisitions, construction, and we keep these revenues separate so we make sure we're balancing the source of revenues with the expenses. Generally, these are restricted through a voter-approved bond or other third-party restrictions and fees. Most prominently is where we put our general obligation bonds are in our capital project funds. We still have 3 that are active in this area. The Flagstaff Urban Trail System, we still have a little bit of money left to issue on that. Our watershed protection fund that we had 10 million to protect our community, as well as most recently our Proposition 441 and 442. That was our infrastructure requests that we had, bonds that we have, as well as our housing bonds that voters approved. We also have a capital project fund for our campus up on the Mesa. United States Geological Survey. They rent and lease buildings for us up on the Mesa, and this is set aside for campus expansion. So when we get into agreements with them, we usually look at construction projects that they are paying back through lease proceeds. So we'll do the debt finance, we'll build the projects, and they'll pay us back through lease payments to pay the debt off. So we keep that separated in our capital project funds. And a large one coming up is Downtown Mile. This is going to be a big project with multiple resources, multiple restricted funds that is going to impact our downtown area over the next several years. Next slide. Debt service funds. These are to account for accumulation of revenues and resources to pay a long-term debt. These revenues are restricted by a couple purposes. Like I mentioned, the general obligation bond, that's a secondary property tax that is only used to pay back general obligation bonds. We also have our pension bond fund, which is supported by the general fund, the Water Resource Infrastructure Protection Fund, and Airport Fund, because these are the ones that have those public safety funded pension obligations. We'll talk more about what we did for this pension bond in the coming slides. And then we have everything else. Everything else that really hasn't been mentioned is what we call our general fund, our biggest operation fund. This accounts for revenue expenditures to finance traditional services that we have in our community, the police, the fire, parks, community development, and so forth. Things that municipal government generally provides to our community and are not counted in other funds. It's a big pot. Our resources in our general fund include several revenues. Our 1% sales tax is our primary resource for the general fund. 1% brings about 30 million annually to support our general fund. We have franchise taxes for use of our right-of-way for some of the like gas, electric, and those. They pay a franchise fee. We have a primary property tax that is assessed to property owners. We have several state shared revenues that are a great benefit to our community, where the state collects revenues on our behalf and then remits to all cities across the state. They have 3 pots where they share state shared sales tax, state shared income tax, and vehicle license tax. All come back to the general fund to help support our operations. That's about another third of our general fund revenues. That and the sales tax is about 2/3 of our revenues, just those categories. We have your license and permits that we issue for people. Fines and forfeitures are from our court system, parking and other fines, as well as user charges, charges for services. We have these throughout our general fund areas, such as community development, planning and development services, recreation. Police has a couple fees that we have. Fire has some, and cemetery. Those are some of the key areas we have some user fees that support the general fund. Any question on the color of money portion? I'm gonna get my water. I don't know why I didn't bring it.
Question.
There we go. There you go.
So I get that there's specific funds for specific operations. Does the city have they identified services that are core and non-core to the city? So like under BBB, it's specific to the various departments that it serves. So when you look at the general fund, are there core services? Is it defined somewhere within a charter somewhere?
No, we don't have core services defined anywhere that I would know that's in the general fund. We haven't gone through that exercise, no.
Okay. Thank you.
There's probably a general conception of what's core services,
That's
right?
right,
What we
but
do.
I'm just curious if it
Right.
lives somewhere in a
It's not
document.
defined,
Okay.
no.
Rick, would it be possible to find out how much more the city is getting from primary property taxes since 2020? I know on my own house, my property taxes are up almost $500 in those 5 years. The city gets a portion of that, not all of it, but a portion of it. Would it be possible to find out how much more money the city is getting in property taxes over the last 5 years? And that's because housing prices have just gone up so much in those 5-year period of time. I'd just be curious to know.
Yeah, we have a couple slides in the revenue resource and toolbox that'll address some of that property tax questions you have, but we can definitely get some more history related to the city side and what we taxed and what we're receiving. There's a lot of state restrictions on what we can increase for our levies, so we'll talk about that more, but yeah, we can bring that in. Yeah.
So with that being said, with the inflation we've been experiencing, and if you're at 1% city sales tax and you're paying 20% more for a cheeseburger, whatever it might be, then that's going to bring the funds that are coming in have actually increased along with the inflation. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's not a measure of transactions, it's a matter of revenues, what we're charging for those.
It's based on the costs
The cost,
and the
yes.
percentage of the total cost.
Absolutely.
So
So
with that,
inflation does have a positive impact to sales tax.
with that rise, it should be increasing the amount of funds that are available in the general fund.
Yeah, that's one component that helps revenues rise, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't see any questions online.
Okay. All right, let's go through how we maintain our fiscal health as an organization. What we do to make sure that we can continue to provide services and business for your community. Next slide. So this section is going to talk about maintaining fiscal health. The city's adopted many types of policies to ensure that we're fiscally strong and healthy, being able to provide resources for ongoing resources in needs of our community. We have numerous policies that we go through to make sure we are meeting those sound financial fiscal management. Some of the key policies include structurally balancing our 5-year plans. So when we're talking about structurally balancing our 5-year plans, we're meaning that we can project that ongoing resources are funding ongoing commitments to expenditures. We don't want to overcommit to where if we see a decline that we're overestimating our revenues and not able to meet our community services. So we balance that over 5 years, and basically we do in 10-year plans. In the budget book, it's a 5-year, but a 10-year plan is what we do. We assure that our estimates are achievable and reasonable. We want to make sure that we don't over project and spend more than we are really going to get in any fiscal year. But then if we do exceed those revenue projections, we use those as a one-time funding. We don't just jump up and spend. We say, okay, this is a one-time resource we were benefited with, and we use those to fund one-time items like capital, equipment replacement, and those types of things. Our general fund has a minimum fund balance policy of 20%. We'll have a slide about fund balance policies in a little bit, but this is just to reserve some resources in case we go through economic downturn or such. We build in recession cycles into our 5 and 10-year plans because we know that these are cyclical. Generally, it's every 7-year trend is that we do see some type of recessionary impact. So we want to make sure that we know that that's going to come down, and we make sure that we keep our ongoing revenues within that. We have a very healthy budget process that we use at the City of Flagstaff. We'll talk about the budget team and those types of things a little bit later, but the budget process is really that function that allows us to allocate resources to programs on an annual basis. And we should be regularly reviewing and updating our user fees and rates for our organization. So as a result of being fiscally responsible, there is positives that we have seen. Our fiscal responsibility shows that we have a great bond rating. And by having great bond ratings, allow you to issue debt at lower rates so you can deliver more projects. Within the City of Flagstaff, on that side. What year was that? So just recently in 2024, we went back out for GO bonds, and we enlisted a couple agencies to look at our bonds and our ratings, our organization. Standards & Poor and Moody's Investors both looked at our organization, our city, our economic viability, and they gave us some positive notes as far as the City of Flagstaff. We always want to be in that high grade, which means your lower rates. And for the Standards & Poor, they increased our outlook from AA to an AA positive. They added a positive swing. They didn't move up the level, but they did say we're in a positive position. Moody's Investor Service actually bumped us up a grade at that time. So we are just one short of the prime grade for general obligation bonds at A, small A1 for Moody's. And also during that time, Fitch decided to do a review of our City of Flagstaff. And upon their research, their review, their calculations, they improved our rating also back in 2024 and moved us up to a AA+. So some very positive reactions to the great work the organization has been doing to make sure we're responsible. Our current our revenues and certificate of participation debt are generally a grade lower. The reasons general obligation bonds are higher rated because it's a secured secondary property tax. You know, that's the payment back, and we got that taxability. Revenues are, you know, revenue bonds are those like we use for water services, those types of things. Certificate of participation debt is leasing your facilities back and getting debt through that. Those are just one grade lower in our bond ratings, but still very good for an organization. All right, fund balance reserves. This is a very important part of the city of Flagstaff as a whole. You look at Government Finance Officers Association. They are the big government financing organization within America and Canada. They provide best practices of how we should manage our unreserved fund balances annually. And we use this as a benchmark to how we set aside our fund balances. The purposes of a good fund balance policy is assist in those economic times of downturn and those risks. It's not necessarily an emergency fund. It's just meaning you have the cash balances. If revenues don't come in, you still have the cash balance to meet your obligations. Setting the appropriate level is important. We don't want to over commit fund balance to where we're not using resources that we can put to use, but you don't want to be under evaluated either because we want to be prepared as we go through. It is more of a balance sheet account. It's not something budgeted. It's a balance sheet account. And it's just a one-time fund that just kind of carries through the 5-year plan. It's more of a cash flow purposes on your financial statements. So like I said, it's not available for spending each year. It's just set there aside in case of an economic downturn. Placeholders for revenues not meeting expectation. Next slide. So here is what we have for our policies in our various funds. In our general fund is at 20%. We put this through the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association model, and we found ourselves in the low to moderate risk level. And with that recommendation, they provided a 17 to 25% fund balance recommendation. So our target is right in the center of that. I think we're in a good spot as we've been in for many years. Our special revenue funds are at 10%, with the exception of our highway user funds. That's a little more volatile revenue these days. We put that at 20%. And then our enterprise funds are all at 10%, with the exception of our water service funds. They actually had a city policy adopted by council, so they have a 25% fund balance reserve. All right, any questions on fund balances? On my pages.
Has the city of Flagstaff ever gone below the 20% like in 2008 and 2009?
Yes. Yeah. Great question. Yeah. So what we do is during bad economic times like in 2008, 2009, we allowed our fund balance to get down to 10%. 10% is kind of that minimum level that is recommended, and bond agencies don't really want to see you go below 10. So we actually went down to the 10% level. And then we worked to build that up and pay it back over a 3 to 5 year period to rebuild that with one-time resources over time. So yeah, it would be common during an economic downturn.
Okay. Is there a reason why council voted to have the water services fund reserve at 25% instead of 10 or some other number?
One of the primary purposes is that they have large capital projects and aging infrastructure, and you just never know when something like that occurs. So it may not be necessarily on the revenue side. That's pretty consistent, but it's on the infrastructure side and replacement and that kind of stuff. They want to be ready for those types of catastrophic events. Yeah. My pages are all messed up. I should have stapled them. All right. So let's talk about multi-year planning. Next slide, there we go. So multi-year planning is there to ensure that we're meeting the promises of today in the future. We want to make sure that we have our commitments in line for baseline operations of whether it's future capital needs and so forth. So we actually put together basically it's a 10-year plan. Our budget book, it only shows a 5-year plan, but we do at least a 10-year plan for all of our funds in the city of Flagstaff. Some go longer, some go the period of a tax, like a tax, maybe a 20-year tax. So we do that really long planning for all of our funds. The important component of these multi-year funding plans is you just don't want to look at today's revenues and spend it all. You want to make sure that you're committing multi-years to your expenditures. So we assure we have reasonable revenue estimates in current years and in future years. We build in those recessionary periods within all of our plans. And we want to make sure our ongoing budgets are balanced with that ongoing resource capacity. We also build in compensation growth into our funds, all of our funds, because staffing, you guys are familiar with that. The cost of employment and all that continues to go up. So we build in those types of compensation increases. And we focus our one-time cash balances. When we exceed those revenue estimates or we don't spend all of our resources, we set those aside and focus those on one-time expenditures. Instead of saying, okay, now we got that to spend every year. So we do focus cash balances on one-time expenditures. Public safety pension. All right. So since we're talking about public safety is part of what this committee is looking at, we thought we should also bring forward kind of a share with you about what we did with our public safety pension liability. The background to this is the public safety pensions for police and fire are managed by the Public Safety Personnel Retirement System, or PSPRS. They actually hold individual plans for every city, for every function that we have, but they are our assets and our liabilities at the end of the day. We are required to make sure we meet our liabilities. PSPRS invests on behalf of all of the cities. They pool the funds, they make investments. They can definitely get a higher return than the city of Flagstaff can. We've definitely seen that over the years. So they do a very good job making sure they got the best investments, as well as they provide an annual actuarial report, which shows where we are measuring from our assets that we have put into the plan to our liabilities and future commitments that fund is going to have. Very important report to receive every year. When liabilities exceed assets, that's what we consider as an unfunded liability. And this is an area that in 2003 became an issue for cities across Arizona. The markets changed, the plan may not have been built properly, but everyone started to see unfunded liabilities grow starting in 2003. To try and work and manage our liability, we participate in a pension task force, trying to figure out how do we get the tools and what needs to be changed in the plans to make them work long term, as well as we adopted some funding policies where we're providing extra funding into these plans, trying to bring down those liabilities or at least manage them over time. One of the negative impacts that we saw during this period was that the cost to add a police officer or firefighter was twice the cost to bring somebody on board because of that liability cost. Because when we pay wages, that's when we got to pay into the pension plan. So the cost of hiring people just doubled right off the bat because of pensions. That was a problem. So we had to address that. Flagstaff kept seeing over $1 million increase year over year because of that growing liability. And then in 2020, we made the bold commitment. We brought a couple council members, met with a financial planning team, Stiefel, as well as PSPRS, Mike Townsend and his team down in Phoenix, to talk about what can we do? How do we make some bold steps and address our unfunded liability? And financing was one of those things that came up, and we took that to heart and started looking into pension financing. So as we went through and we received our last report before we talked about 2020, we were in the 30 to 40% funded for our pension plans. Not very well. We were behind. We're on the back side of the curve. So we knew we had to make these commitments, and we did. So that year, council approved us issuing pension debt. We were the first in the state to do a pension debt in Arizona. California's done it, others have done it, but Arizona, we were right up front. The timing was amazing. Our decision was to issue certificate of participation debt. This is a debt that the council has authority to allow us to issue. And what you do is you basically pledge your facilities as a repayment of your debt. So we pledged our fire stations, our police department, city hall, and so forth. It wasn't a 100% pledge. It was 30%, 25, 30% pledge in assets for them to issue debt. By issuing the debt, we did achieve getting to 100% funded in our pension plans for both police and fire. This reduced our annual payments substantially over what we were paying in excess by about $2 million a year, which really eased the burden, made it easier for us to forecast and plan our general fund. This leveled off when we were looking at the future pension payments. They were always going up, but this leveled off by paying pension debt. It levels off that mountain of future payments that we would have had. But, you know, we're always concerned. Brandy and I really thought about this, and we really thought we better put together a contingency fund to make sure this plan works, to manage risk, changing markets, changing actuarial assumptions could really bump us back into that trend. We don't want to go back there. So we set aside a contingency reserve fund. And we'll be paying off the debt in 20 years versus the 28 years that was in the PSPRS plan. So here's just kind of where the trends were going over the last, since 2006. While we were trying to make measurements, working the task force, adding additional fundings, we just could not get the mountain of payments under control. So back in 2006, we were 75% funded. Not bad. But as we got into 2013, we were down to 50%. And like I said, before we did the financing, we were down to 37% and $112 million liability, future liability. So you can see in 2020, when we made the bold move to issue debt and move it to a debt payment versus a pension payment, we brought these two plans back in line. They were over 100% funded at the time of the debt financing, 103% or so, and we had a contingency reserve set aside. And since then, we've been managing that. We've been keeping that within the 100% funding. Next slide. So the numbers go $131 million in certificate of participation debt. That's the largest debt the city has issued, but for a very good cause. The timing was incredible, and we had great bond ratings with this one also. This was during COVID. You would think maybe they would have looked at bond ratings a little different, revenue a little different, but we had a great bond rating, and we got a 2.69% interest rate, all in cost. It was just an incredible time. Net present value savings over that 20 or 28-year period was $76 million that the taxpayers won't have to pay in future debt through the pension plan. Both plans are fully funded. The contingency reserve fund was $14 million. That's been in a moderate investment because we want to make sure that's available. That's now at $16 million. And our debt service payments are $8.6 to $9.2 million a year versus what we've been paying previously. Side. So that was a big jump. We moved from one side of that bell curve to the other side with few others in the states to be 100% funded or more. And since then, there's been a lot more agencies going through pension financings or commitments. And these numbers have grown. I think there are now 30 plans that are above 100% in the state of Arizona at this time. So talking about the benefits, financial planning and so forth is of course long-term savings for taxpayers. Manageable expectation of future costs. We know what our debt service payments are. Our pensions are in check. Pension expense went from 86% of personnel costs down to just 12% that we have this year. So we can manage that on top of payroll costs. That was the fire side. On the police side, it went from 46 to 10% in pension expense for our organization. Much more manageable. The relief of growth from our pension costs helped our airport fund, general fund, airport fund, and water resource infrastructure fund. Those are the funds that we're talking about with public safety. So they all benefit in some fashion by this financing. Any questions on pension financing? All right. Any applause? We're very fortunate. All right, another item in our financial planning and toolbox is a recession plan, economic recession plan. We talked about, we know these are cyclical. We know they come. We've had some really bad ones back in 2008, but there have been cycles where we've seen these economic downturns.
Like a maybe like this.
Is that
I think that's feedback. He's online.
Okay. As long as it's muted, we're good.
okay? So we adopted a economic recession plan for the city of Flagstaff in the fall of 2019 is when we start seeing revenues decline. This is before COVID hit. We actually saw some declines in 2019. And so through the guidance of the city manager at the time and the budget team, we developed a economic recession plan, preparing us to get us ready for potential downturns in the future. Staff budget team completed this plan in February of 2020. Interesting time. What timing, huh? Just before the 2020 March pandemic hit. And so we actually had this reviewed and approved by council just before the pandemic. So it couldn't have been more timely for our organization. A copy of the plan is in your documents that were sent out today. And I'm just going to go over some of the key aspects to a recession plan. It identifies actions based on the level of revenues declining or expectations. It allows us to act quickly. Identifies those actions that we would do in each step. And allows us to implement those measures quickly. It overlays independently of the adopted budget. So we're not looking to go back to council to cut budget. We're going to maintain the budget, but we're going to ask for reduction in expenditures and manage that way versus doing budget cuts. In larger recessions, we may have to have future budget cuts, but not in the initial recession year. It's adaptable, as recessions can vary in duration and depth. This plan can adapt and stay with those length of terms or the deepness of any types of recessions. And as we get to those higher stages, we are looking for council discussion about actions that we will have to take when we get above a certain percent, 5% or better. And this action by council gives the city manager the appropriate tools and levels, measures to take care of our economic downturns. Next slide. The primary focus that we have in our recession plan is about operating expenses versus capital improvements. Operating expenses are those ongoing operation services that we want to try to maintain levels, but we want to make sure that we're maybe cutting back on the cost of delivering services where applicable. Our capital improvement programs are generally a 10-year plan or so, so we understand that those can make adjustments over time. So we don't necessarily do a lot of cutbacks on our CIP programs during economic recessions. It's a matter of timing. Some projects that are maybe not urgent, we delay those, we wait, we defer some large purchases potentially. But the main focus that we use our recession plan is our general fund. General fund, of course, is our biggest operating fund. We'll talk about that later, but it's about 41% of the operating budget for the city of Flagstaff. So that's where we watch a lot of that economic downturn. During a recession, we want to make sure we're investing our dollars strategically. We actually want to invest more dollars in tourism, advertising, getting people to come to our community, reactivating people to visit Flagstaff from the valley or so forth, wherever they can come from. So we invest there. Construction is where we don't want to slow down construction. We want people working. We want people working on our projects, working in our community. We don't want to have that to have a negative impact by cutting projects and cutting construction. So those are where we strategically continue to invest monies. So here is kind of a visual of kind of the stages of our recession plan. I'm not going to go through every step that we have here, but this is just a high visual. The plan has more details of what we do in each step as we go through these processes. So we start with our alert and minor stage. And this is just activated when the budget team meets, we talk about revenues, and we see potential revenue estimates being 2 to 3% below our projections. There's some minimal activity that we ask people to do, reduce expenditures where reasonable, postponing filling positions may be part of it. But we're cautious about which positions are postponed. Public safety, we kind of try and keep those moving, but others may be able to be delayed a little bit longer. And then we continue to step up with additional steps as we move forward. Moderate is the second level that the city manager has the authority to move into. That's the 3 to 5% revenue reduction. Here we start talking about bigger picture things, the non-essential services, large purchases, delayed, canceling, or negotiating consulting contracts and services, maybe partial freeze on hiring staff. Travel is very limited when we get into the moderate stage. Then from there on, significant, major, and crisis all create a council action. Well, we'll be in front of council. We'll talk about our economic situation. We'll explain where we're seeing the revenue trends going down. And we'll ask for us to move to these stages for the stronger management of our financial resources. I'm not going to go through everything from there, but you can see there's bigger impacts when you get above 5%. It really is a bigger impact for the city of Flagstaff. I have written down, there it is, as a reference to the Great Recession, that was approximately 13% decline in revenues for the city of Flagstaff. That was a big hit, but that was also sustained over multiple years, also with that recession. So you can see where that gets more toward a major, a crisis would be a major economic event that the city would have in our community. All right. Any questions on the economic recession plan? All right. Next up, we wanted to explain, what we have in our toolbox as far as revenues and resources to deliver services citywide for our organization. So we're gonna step through, there is a handout for this also that you have that shows our toolbox and some bullet points there. I'm gonna walk through these with you. In our resource toolbox, user fees and rates, those are items that the council can adopt by council authority, fees for different services, such as water rates, recreation rates, building permit rates, and those kind of things are all a council's prerogative. On these slides and on the handout, you'll see the little money bags. And what the money bags represent, what type of funds have these types of resources available for them to have to provide services. So for user fees, general funds, special ed funds, enterprise funds, all have this opportunity. Property taxes, we will talk about this a little bit more. There's actually two types of property taxes for the city of Flagstaff. The primary property tax is set by council annually, and there's a lot of restrictions, guidelines around what council can do as far as rate increases, and we'll talk a little bit more on the later slide with that. And secondary property tax is the assessment for revenues based on voter approval to complete projects and deliver capital improvements in our community. Primary property tax goes to the general fund. Secondary property tax could be used for any types of activity, any type of capital project or costs that voters approve. We have our transaction privilege taxes. This is definitely one of our major resources to deliver services in our community. These are all required to be approved by voters. We do have to go in front of them to get these approvals. We have several groups. We have our general sales tax. That's the 1% I talked about earlier for the general fund. In our special revenue funds, we have two areas, which are transportation taxes and our BBB taxes. And later on in the presentation, I'll go more into those sales tax areas and break down the sales tax rates that we have approved for you to see. Next slide. Another resource opportunities is debt, issuing debt to deliver projects. Generally, it's a capital project. You don't want to issue debt for operations. But we have several types of debt that the city can issue. But keep in mind, you have a revenue source to pay these back. You can't just issue debt and not have something to pay it back. So you got to make sure you have the commitment to pay your debt back. Revenue debt is very commonly used for water services type bonds for their infrastructures, where we're pledging the fees that are brought in by the consumer to fund capital projects. Certificate of participation debts, that's what we talked about, where we pledge a building or so forth in the faith of the city to pay back our debts. We've used that for the pension finance, and we've used it for another building or two in the city of Flagstaff. The courthouse was one where we pledged the courthouse to pay back the debt. Municipal improvement, loans and leases. We can go to loan and lease agreements with council approval, as well as a municipal improvement district. You also heard those as special improvement districts. We've had several successful ones. The downtown, the Aspen Sawmill, had a little struggle during the recession, but still successful. And what's the other one?
Bow and arrow.
Yes. Bow and Arrow, out Lake Mary was another improvement district. The one not mentioned on here is general obligation bonds. We also have that authority with voter approvals. We'll have another slide related to that for you here. Next is our development fees. These are a fee that council is allowed to approve and have the authority. We'll have more on this in a coming slide also. These are usually development fees based on growth and projects coming to our community. Then we have capacity fees, which are very similar to development fees, but these are specifically allowed for water, wastewater collections, capacity fees. So as people grow and tap into our resources, Water Services has a capacity for growth related projects that they would, the council would approve, and they have approved. We are actually in the process of reviewing those this year, and we'll be bringing in new infrastructure plan. We got to review these every 5 years. We got to define our infrastructure improvement plan, and we got to present the council and get that through public processes for adoption, which will occur early next year. Grants is one of the city's biggest success stories over many, many years. Grants are those federal funding, state funding, local, county, what am I thinking? It's probably down here. Foundations. Stacy, help me out. Speaking of success, we've been very successful at bringing revenues back into our community. So, us taxpayers are paying federal, state taxes, and we're doing our best to bring those back to our communities through federal grants, state grants, and so forth. It's very important that we do keep being successful in bringing these back to our community. State and federal appropriations is another area where we reach out to the state or federal agency and say, hey, we're having these issues. We're looking to bring more money back to our community to address some community needs. Recently, we had a couple successes here. When we were having flooding issues, we were able to get $9 million for flood mitigation through state appropriations. Definitely thanks to our chamber, who really helped spearhead that and help us get some funding for flood mitigation, the spruce washing, those kind of things. And just this current fiscal year, we got $4 million for fire training facility or wildfire training facility to help us build a new building for this. While it's not going to be a full cost for that training facility, it does provide a great percentage of those costs. So reaching out, being in communication with our local our representatives is very important. All right. Now we're going to dive deeper into some of the things I said we talked about later. If I keep my notes straight. Okay. All right, development fees. Development impact fees are fees that are applied to a new or proposed development project at the city of Flagstaff. As you work through our planning and development services division, we calculate what's your cost. It'll be a proportionate share of costs necessary to provide public services. There's state statutes that drive what we can and cannot do with development impact fees. We calculate these based on the infrastructure improvement plan. I talked about that recently, we're doing that this fiscal year. We have impact fees for public safety, facilities, apparatus and vehicles, communication equipment, and for renewing our development fee reports. There are several other areas that the city is considering, or at least looking at, that we could have a development fee for libraries, parks, and transportation. We're just looking at what those could look like. Impact fees are to cover growth-related capital projects, not for operations or maintenance efforts, not to repair a building or those kind of things, but it's more growth-related expansion, which future development brings on. And when we adopt fees, they may fund all or part of a capital expansion plan. It may not fully fund those. So what can these fees not pay for? They can't pay for administrative, maintenance, operating costs of a municipality. They can't construction, acquisition, expansion of public facilities assets other than necessary public services and facilities that are allowed within the infrastructure improvement plan and state statutes. Repair, operations, and maintenance. Almost sounds like a repeat there for public safety services and facilities. Upgrading the internal components of a facility, correcting, replacing necessary public services to serve physics developments in order to meet strictly. I should have read this one better. Stricter safety efficiency, environmental and regulatory standards. So your environmental standard, your safety standard, you can't just have a impact fee because of standards that are throughout or passed on to us by fed, state, or local. Upgrading, updating, expanding, correcting, replacing existing national public services to form higher level of services than existing development is paying for. So you can't say, well, we want to increase public safety funding, so we can't just have an impact fee to pay for increased level of service. So I took those out of the statutes, so that's hard to read there.
We've got a couple
Yes,
questions
yep.
out there.
Just, I know this sometimes comes up when we have a conversation with citizens about development impact fees. This is really a tremendous tool. And there's a lot of positive public good that comes out of development impact fees. But just to be super clear, Engine 1 needs to be replaced. We can't replace Engine 1 with development impact fees. Hiring of personnel, police officers, firefighters, we cannot use any of those funds to put more boots on the ground. And really it's an important distinction. Big tool, we profited from it, but it does not address much of what the constraints are in public safety.
Rick, would it be possible to get some information? I know that the impact fee for public safety, I believe, is like $25,000 a lot, something like that.
Yeah, I don't have to talk about that.
What I'd like to know is, because I looked this up on the city's website, since 2020, when we declared a housing emergency, the number of building permits issued by the city has declined every year during that period of time, except for one. And last year, to give you an example, last year in 2024, nationally building permits were up 6%. In the state, they were up 20%. And in the city of Flagstaff, they were down 41%. I'd like to see what the cost to the city is for not keeping up with the building permits to be issued, because that's a significant amount of money that we're not generating because we just simply aren't building enough homes inside the city of Flagstaff. And I'd like to see what that number would look like.
Okay. Yeah, we could look at the, as far as the development fee impact, it means we're not collecting as much as we anticipated. We may still have the cost. So as you update these every 5 years, it may impact what you need to assess over time, if you're not meeting what your expectations are. But I like the correlation that you talked about, and we can look at that data and bring that back.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Rick, what is like the dollar amount, say for the last fiscal year, for public safety that the development impact fees generated?
I'm phoning my friends, Brandy Sue, our finance director, and Heidi Deary, our budget director. They should be able to find those. It does vary year to year based on when permits are pulled and size of projects. But we do have a report that we're required to post. It's online as far as air impact fee collections. It's on the finance webs portion of the city of Flagstaff. So annually, we do provide that report for you.
And then specifically, like, where do those funds go? Like, let's say the city collects 5 million in impact fees. Where do those funds go? Are those then set in an account
Yes.
to be used for capital improvements at a later date, depending upon department needs.
Yes, they are in a restricted fund balance solely for the purpose that is outlined for development fees. They are also interest-bearing accounts, so they benefit from the interest growth also by setting those funds aside. Then through an annual budget process, usually through a budget process, police or fire will bring forth items that are eligible for development impact fees. And we'll look at that, make sure the justification's there. We'll budget for it and we'll expend it on appropriate resource out of that restricted fund. For instance, we recently purchased a new ladder truck with development fees. So the budget is where we get to spend it, but we do restrict it. And we are required to spend we are required to spend them within 10 years of collection. So if we're holding on to them, shame on us, we get the money back. We're not there yet, but we hope we don't have to pay them back.
So maybe I'm confused. You said you just spent the money on a ladder truck, but he said they couldn't
A
buy.
new ladder truck. We
An-
expanded our fleet.
Okay,
We went from 2 ladder trucks in our community to 3 ladder trucks. So
okay,
anytime we expand,
okay, so there's a difference between replacing the existing one and expanding with a new one. Okay, that's where my confusion was. Thanks for, okay,
good clarification. So we have a certain number of police vehicles in our community. If we need to add 10 more to our community, that could be growth related,
what are those?
but not the replacement of the other ones.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
We gotta watch that justify.
So between our police and fire development fees, we collected just over $1.2 million in fiscal year 2025. And at the end of fiscal year 2025, we currently have $4.5 million accumulated.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
And as we're going through this process, looking at the things, the capital items that may be brought forward, a portion of those could be funded with development fees, and we're trying to balance that out versus tax rates, use development fees, and we'll look through that as we move forward. All right. Transaction privilege tax. One of the most major resources we have for the city of Flagstaff. It's also known as a sales tax. That's your. This is tax on privilege of doing business in the city of Flagstaff. All these taxes do require a voter approval, and all of ours do have a sunset date. We're not required to have a sunset date. Something we'll ask you to think about, whether you sunset tax like we're talking about, or you keep it ongoing. But we go back to the voters to get these renewed currently. Here's the breakdown of the percentages that we have currently taxes, and they're all except for the general sales tax are restricted for specific uses and dedications. Half of the cities in Arizona at the time I put this together were 3% or higher in their local sales tax. We're at 2.46, but when you add the bed, board, and beverage tax on only certain categories, hotels, motels, and restaurants, bars, we're at 4.48. Other cities do have a BBB tax also, maybe called different in different cities. So from the baseline for our tax rate, we fall in that range. Our 1% is about 30 million. So as we're talking about potentially bringing a tax measure forward, 0.1 brings us 3 million in ongoing resources, 0.25, 7.5. So we'll adjust that and measure that as you make your decisions over time. We're gonna, when we come back and we give more comparisons and details, we'll do more comparisons about total tax rates. We'll do that in a couple weeks when we come back to the general fund. So we'll give you some more comparisons of how we measure up to other cities statewide. One thing to note, Coconino County does have a higher county sales tax rate than most counties in Arizona. So you'll see that ours will be in the top when you talk total tax rate in the state of Arizona. So we'll bring more data to you for that in the coming session. Primary property tax is our next one. There are many items on your property tax bill. You're all aware of that. And many of these are within your tax bill. These are assessed and collected by the county, Coconino County. It's responsible for them to make sure they're assessing based on what we're asking for. Cities and towns' proportion of all the tax bills is approximately 8.5% for all cities in Coconino County versus the total county tax bills is about 8.5%. Comes back to the city of Flagstaff. The largest portion of property taxes go to education. 58% is for education. Then the special districts within Coconino County is about 30%. So we have ability to have a primary property tax. Currently, our primary tax goes into our general fund to support operations. Rate is adopted and proposed by the city council each June, July, as we're adopting the new budget. We come back and say what we're going to assess as far as rates going through the calculation. The state restricts an annual increase on the levy of 2%. And we're talking about levy, that is the revenue the city is allowed to bring in from the current tax roll. So we can only increase by 2% annually. There's other restrictions within what the county does for assessed valuations. The maximum an assessed valuation can go for limited property value is 5% a year. That's the most that they will do for your tax bills. So we take that measure in account as well as what we're allowed to tax to get to where our tax rates will be. During the last 6 years, we kept what we call the levy flat. We brought in the same level of revenues as the previous year at the city of Flagstaff. We did not take advantage of that 2% additional levy. So we were allowed to levy the current levy plus new construction, new tax rolls on our bill, new projects that come into active status for issuing property taxes. So that's what we've done over the last 6 years. We've left a levy. What you may be seeing, maybe more on the secondary property tax from the city of Flagstaff, because that's a flat rate. So as your assessed values go up, that goes up. We'll talk about that in a minute. By not using that 2% levy, it's still available for the city of Flagstaff. We have up to 14% capacity, which equals about $1 million. I would never recommend that the city goes that high on an increase in any year. Plus, I believe there's a state restriction that 10% is the most we can do a year. Is that where they were at?
I think you just need a supermajority.
Oh,
Council to.
there's a voting requirement to get above a certain percent. So when we bring a budget forward, we do not recommend a tax increase unless council has some other needs and stuff that they want to bring forward. So we do ask them if there is an increase to the levy, I mean, year over year, we are required to do certain publications in the newspaper as well as a truth and tax presentation for adoption for city council. So a couple extra steps if we do that. Any other questions on secondary property tax? I missed something you were asking? Are we good? All right. The next property tax that we're allowed to levy is secondary property tax. We're only allowed to levy it if we have a capital project or bond or debt that voters have approved. So we do go to the voters to issue debt to pay back for projects that voters have approved. The levy is for those payments. Secondary property tax for the city of Flagstaff can only be used for paying back general obligation bonds. We can't use it for any other resource. There are some state legal limitations based on total assessed valuations. There's a 20% level, which allows us to issue up to $303 million. We are not near that at this time. It would take a big tax increase to go there, but that's our limitation from a state perspective. It's for these types of areas, your water, sewer, public safety, fire, emergency services, and so forth. Then they kind of do this catch-all. You get another 6% for those that don't fit within the 20%. And that 7% allows to go up to $100 million. This is one where housing was aligned when we went to the community for a housing secondary property tax bond. So we used that authority. Then talking about city policy and what we adopt in rates, we currently have a 0.8000 per 100 of net assessed valuation is our current rate that we have for the city of Flagstaff. It was a little bit higher a few years ago, but we were able to bring it down. Our current policy is to stay at that rate or below, based on what we promised to the voters when we went back out for those infrastructure and housing bonds. So our intention is to continue to maintain that or below. We are allowed to, if we have debt that we have to pay and we have to assess it, we can go above it, but we've got the commitment not to go above. And we got planning, we do a lot of planning to assure we stay within there. It's based on current projected assessed valuation. So as assessed valuations grow, it does grow that resource to pay back debt. The capacity we have under that 0.8 rate is about $80 million over the next 22 years after issuances. So we have capacity to stay within that rate for that period of time out to 2024, 2046, 47. I would not recommend asking for that all in 1 year, but over time, you layer those types of questions in for our community. We still have some bonds that we haven't issued yet, about $4 million we haven't issued yet for water infrastructure, housing, and foots. And then as you know, as the years move out, we pay off debt, and it always grows our capacity over time. And that's what this chart's trying to provide you with an example. So we have our current debt, we've got our proposed debt. So the blue is what our rate would be if we just stayed with our current debt. We didn't issue any more debt, didn't restructure, how it could impact our rate for the organization. But we know we got to issue new debt. So we issue our new debt, that'll keep us at the 0.8, and then we got capacity for new debt. When you issue debt, you can issue in different cycles, different years, different payoff periods to help maintain that 0.8 over the period of time. But we do have quite a bit of capacity at this time. It's over, this is 72, it's actually over 80 at this time. So there's our secondary property tax for our toolbox. So that was the overview of revenue resources in our toolboxes. Yes.
Just a question regarding general obligation bonds. I know that over the past several years, we've done two significant GO bond requests. One was for the new public works building. The other was for the new municipal courthouse.
Yeah.
And in both those cases, the voters were told that some of the debt, not all of it, but some of the debt would be paid for by the sale of existing facilities. The existing public works yard never got sold. We don't need to talk about why, but it never got sold. So the money that would have come from that was never there to pay down the debt that was told to the voters to be used.
Now it wasn't to pay down the debt. So that was to fund the project. The debt was only for a certain portion of the full public works yard.
Sure.
Yeah. Then a portion was other resources. So it was never intended to pay back debt. Only secondary property tax paid back that debt.
So how do we fund the project?
We had to reach into other pockets.
Okay.
Maybe I don't know if you have details, but we had to figure out where the funding sources are coming from.
So,
I think general fund was a big portion of that. Did
Her
Herb
help
had,
support it.
had to pitch in.
We
with
issued
revenue.
some certificates of participation with solid waste to pay for part of their building.
So all these other funds are trying to pitch in.
okay, so now the municipal courthouse.
Yeah.
I know that there's a development proposal, hasn't been approved yet, for the old municipal courthouse building. What will the proceeds of that sale, if that happens, where will that go?
So that was part of the whole courthouse calculations. While we only issued 12 million of what we had for a $20 million project. So this is one of those resources that we were gonna use to fund above and beyond. This money is gonna go and help with other parking within the downtown area. Our intention is to, I don't know how much we can share yet, but our intention is to take that funding, because we're really related to parking. We want those resources to add related to the courthouse and that impact that we have downtown. So we got that reserve to go to that specific use, as well as some of the money left over from the initial 20 million is still set aside for that purpose.
Okay.
Yeah. Hopefully I've followed all that. Yes.
Are we gonna talk about the BB&B tax later, or is now a good time to talk about it?
But we can talk about that.
I guess just a general question is like, it seems to have been a successful tax because it got reapproved by the voters. How much of that money that the BB&B tax brings in is actually used in a fiscal year? And is there a fund that's building with excess funds?
Gosh, it kind of varies by the funds, because some are more operating, some are capital, where you build capital to deliver projects. I don't have the full numbers. You know, tourism is more of an operating fund. We're keeping reinvesting money in our community. Arts and science continue to get, you know, grant funding out and so forth, but I don't have those figures. We could look at in our budget book, there's a 5-year plan of their revenues and resources.
I guess it'd be good numbers, because if we're looking at, modeling a public safety tax kind of on a BB&B type of level, potentially like a department-specific tax, that might be a good thing to look at, is how has that been successful versus a public safety tax if we go down that route?
Well, what Rick's saying too is, like with tourism, we have a 5-year plan, and it's really easy to budget that because you know what you're going to be doing for marketing and what you're going to be doing for sales, and what you're going to be doing for travel trade and all that. With beautification, those projects take a longer time to get completed. So we budget every year to utilize the budget, but sometimes we have to carry forward if something with construction or whatever gets delayed. But it's a little bit different with tourism. You can always market and you can always continue to invest into getting people back here and being, spending money in the destination, which helps all of the BBB programs with Parks and Rec and things like that. So Parks and Rec has a 5-year plan, and they might say, I want to put a new park in, but it just can't happen maybe that fiscal, but they're planning to put those parks in or to do what they just did, for instance, with Bushmaster and things like that. So it's a little bit different, but each of them have a 5-year plan. It shows exactly what their money is going to, and then they all hold budget retreats each year to go over with their commissions and get their recommendations to make sure that this is how they want them to spend the funds.
Yeah, so they have commissions. Is that something that this team wants to commission to look at the tax? Right. Do want them based on the BBB? Yeah. Something to consider. All right. It is now 20 to 7. The clock's a little bit off.
It's actually 5:01.
Like, man, I've been talking a while.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
So you've got a
Quiet,
little
right?
less than 50 hours.
All right. This is our last section for today. So now we're going to start talking about budgeting, how we allocate resources. We're going to start from the city-wide perspective, let you guys have an understanding what the organization for City of Flagstaff is, what our funds are, what our divisions are, and so forth. We just thought this would be a good foundation to know how we operate here at the City of Flagstaff. So our intention is really to get that big picture view so you can see where we're allocating our resources, our budget processes, and so forth. And then next year we'll dive down into general fund and the other funds to give you more details, and then following with some comparison data to next year. So budgeting is, we always rely on our General Government Finance Officers Association. The purpose of budgeting is to allocate community resources for public goods and services, provide legal authority to tax and spend, and act as a policy document that communicates goals and builds accountabilities. A budget serves as a vital management tool and plans for future assuring financial stability, which we've talked about, allowing for monitoring adjustments, ensure government operations continue effectively. Talk about our resources, ongoing and one time. So here is that big budget document and financial plan that we put out annually. This is on our website. It's coming up in the future, but this is really where the guts of our work on an annual basis goes. It also does have, the 5-year plans and details of the programs. So this is a good resource to look at if you want to look at city operations. How do we get to budget decisions at the City of Flagstaff? We use what we call as a budget team currently. The budget team is developed by the city manager to help make decisions on allocating resources and supporting our organization. The purpose of this budget team is to provide financial advisement, strategic direction to city organization, and to protect the interest of the public through sound fiscal services. So if it's money related, fiscal related, usually the budget team has a conversation about those types of commitments in our organization. The city manager utilizes many in our organization to help build and have these strategic thoughts as far as allocating resources. Here's the list. Here's the city manager, the senior deputy city manager, the deputy city manager, our budget director and budget manager. We do have a member from an employee advisory committee to represent. So the employees are represented when we're talking about budget decisions. Our finance director, our HR and risk management director, they're very valuable because we talk a lot about personnel impacts. That's a lot of our costs is related to personnel and those things. Management service director is me. And then we bring in 3 rotating division directors to help. Those are usually ones that are in the operations of the organization. And we get different perspectives when we hear from different division directors. And then we have our declared emergency representatives. As we talk about things impacting housing or sustainability, we bring that team on to have conversations and talk about budget. The process is a very long process, actually year-round for us, but as far as the process to get a budget adopted, it starts in next month, December. We're going to have a council retreat, start talking about where we are economically, our revenue growth, start getting their focus on goals and what we want to bring forward in this budget session. Then we put the responsibility on divisions and sections to prepare and input what they are requesting for budget requests in the coming fiscal year. We start to dive deeper into our budget retreat with City Council in February. This is where we're getting those final directions of what they want to see when we come back to them in April. Then the budget team meets and reviews budget requests between February and March. It's a long process, meeting with each division, talking about their needs, talking about what they're proposing, and then trying to come to a balanced approach to what we are funding. And in the end, it's the city manager's budget that is recommended to the city council. We make sure this plan is balanced. That's what we're trying to get to through all these discussions. We do have a special council budget retreat related to capital projects, because you'll see there are large investments we're doing in our community. So we want to keep them apprised to those. Then in April is where we get our final direction. We provide the city manager proposal of what we are proposing. Council could chime in and say, no, please reallocate resources, add funding here, cut there, what have you. They have that opportunity at the April retreat. Then we've got the state requirements to get an adopted budget. We got to go through a public hearing for the property tax. We have to have a tentative budget adoption, which sets the maximum allowed for next year. And then we adopt the final budget, and then go to our property tax levies. And by July 1st, we're ready to implement that budget. So a view of the annual budget book, like I mentioned, this budget book's available on our website. There's a website there. Hopefully you can click on and get it to there. Otherwise, you go into the city website, go under divisions, management services, finance and annual budget reports are there. One thing maybe to take a glance at is the transmittal letter. This is the city manager's thoughts as far as the budget process and what's being proposed for this coming year. It gives you some pretty good insight of where we are. So I'd recommend that and any other part of the budget you're interested in. I got ahead of myself. All right. So here is, as we go into this, we're going to talk about how the city operates. Within the city of Flagstaff, we have funds, and then within funds we have divisions, we have sections, and we got programs. So that's kind of the hierarchy of our organization within the city of Flagstaff. So we have 50 funds 50 plus funds that we manage as an organization. Within that, we have 17 operating divisions that are delivering those funds. Some divisions may have multiple funds, such as like Public Works would have perf, solid waste, they have multiple funds they manage and oversee. So 17 operating divisions, we have 94 sections within the city of Flagstaff, and over 482 programs to deliver services in our community. We also manage and oversee 240 different revenue accounts for the city of Flagstaff. We're quite a big operation here at the city. I really consider us a full service city. We have a lot of service that many cities may not have. We've got a landfill, we got an airport, we got libraries and so forth. So we are really a full city, full service city. Now we get into numbers, but mainly it's more about telling you the breakout, the percentages, and how we're currently funding our programs and funds and so forth. So first up is our budget by fund types. We talked about fund types during the color of money. Then we'll dive a little bit further as we go through these slides as a citywide review. Here you can see our 6 different fund types of general funds, special revenue funds, and you can see how they compare to each other. Our largest here is our enterprise funds, our water, airport, those are our largest funds, followed by our special revenue funds. And then general fund is third as far as revenues brought in to support their programs and projects. As we move to the right, this is the budgeted expenditure side. funds are spent. So you'll notice that the left column doesn't match the right column. What covers the difference is generally fund balance and carryover. We may not have spent all resources. We fund it one time in other projects. So that's the other resource outside of revenues that we have when available. So here you can see that, again, the enterprise funds is our largest group of funds for the city of Flagstaff, followed by our special revenue funds. And then third is our general fund of all these types. Diving down to where we spend the money is our next slide, demonstrating how we spend our resources. The first one is classifications. This is kind of our budget documents set up as required. Operations, capital improvement projects is actually our largest budget this year. That's a lot of, almost 50% of our budget this year is related to capital. Of course, we've got some major capital project funds, our transportation tax funds. They've got some big projects they're delivering. Water resources, water and those enterprise funds have a lot of capital projects that they're looking to deliver. Then it's operations. After capital, it's operations, delivering the services in our community. This is your staffing. This is your sections delivering services. The breakdowns are debt service commitments as well as equipment. And then contingencies are monies we set aside one time annually. And contingencies are there for the purpose of unknown expenditures in several funds. Many of the funds have a contingency fund, and it's there set aside to address mid-year issues that come up. A material water line break that we didn't have the funding for. We may look to use contingencies. Use of contingency does require council action and approval to use contingencies. So they are there, but we do still need council commitment to spend those. So that's what that line is for. On the right is by types. Personal services is your salaries, your benefits, your taxes, your retirement plans, those types of things for our organization. Contractual are those contracts to deliver services, software, those types of things. Commodities are those goods, the papers, the products. And a capital is your, of course, operating capital, your equipment, as well as capital improvement programs. So here again, no surprise, capital is our major investment that we have, followed by contractuals, and then our personnel service costs citywide. So breaking that down further, so this is the breakdown by the funds types. You can see how fund types vary on how they operate, they budget. When you look at the general fund, you'll see that the primary purpose of the general fund is for operating funds, delivering the parks and recs, the fires, and so forth in our community. And then there's some for capital. That capital number this year is, we've had some other commitments that we're investing in, but our ongoing budget for that, it's only about 1.3 million ongoing, but we've got some one-time monies that we're investing in capital this year, but primarily it's operating funds. Then as you move to special revenue funds, you see that now we're investing in capital projects and improvements more than we are on the operating side, as well as enterprise funds are, close to 50-50 operating versus capital investments. Capital project funds, of course, are mostly capital related. So that just kind of shows you how different fund types actually budget on an annual basis. Now I want to dive down into divisions. We've got lots of divisions in our organization. We have 17 operating divisions at the city of Flagstaff. So here's a breakdown of this year's budgeted expenditures compared to each division. And By looking at this, you can see where our major groups of spending are. Of note, the biggest note I need to make is related to general administration. We kind of combine those because that's 7 different operating divisions that really provide support for all the organization, all funds across the city. Your city manager, city attorney, human resources, risk management, information technology, the municipal court, community and civic engagement, as well as management services. We're support divisions. And we'll talk about, these are in the general fund, but we'll talk about how the other funds pay for that in a coming slide. After that, that group of 7, you can see how other areas line up on this plan in the current year. Police is the highest outside the general administration, followed by economic vitality, which has our airports and libraries and those things. All the BBB funds most BB funds are there. Then followed by public works with our streets, solid waste, those programs. Water services follows up after that. And then fire department is in that top category, over 20 million annual investment in this year's budget. So that gives you a picture of how we have to plan and distribute funds throughout the organization for many divisions that we have. So talking about general administration within the general fund, how do we charge that out to other divisions? So we go through an annual process to look at and compare what people are getting in services. So we'll look at these support divisions, like the IT division, say, okay, how many computers are we supporting? And we'll look at each fund and we'll start allocating funds, and we'll actually get revenues back from all those different fund types back into the general fund to support the cost of these general administration services. So coming back to the general fund this year is about $8.5 million that we charge to library funds, HERF, the water services, solid waste, and so forth. They don't all have their own accountant, their own city attorney, their own city manager. We really are centralized when it comes to support services. So while it's in the general fund, we do get payback from other funds. And next I'm going to look at, provide some staffing information for citywide. Here's a chart that goes back to kind of that recession that we talked about back in 2008, 2009. We were at over 900 staff at that time, and with that great recession, we had to make some material cuts in our organization. That process continued for over 5 years, where we had to keep adjusting and amend our budgets and staffing levels all the way to 2014 before we actually saw some uptick in ability to add staffing to our organization. So that was a long recession period and a lot of impacts to staffing. Since then, we've been growing pretty well year over year. We grew pretty good a couple of years, and then we kind of slowed down during COVID. We kind of leveled off the bar, and then we picked up again these last few years, and now we're kind of leveling off for a second time. But to break that down by divisions, we're talking about divisions. Go to the next slide. Here's the staffing history by divisions for the last 10 years. So you can see the staffing we have for police, fire, those general administration categories, or all those categories we talked about in other divisions of the city of Flagstaff. You can see how it's all broken down. Note, you'll see that some became new divisions in certain years, such as engineering. Engineering was pulled out of community development, so you'll see a drop in numbers as you go year to year. What's the next one? Sustainability. And pros pulled out of public works. So some of these new ones were just leveling out where staffing was under division responsibility. But here's kind of that trend. One thing I forgot to pull out is housing. Housing is I accidentally put it in general administration. Housing is really a separate division. And I don't have their numbers on this one. It was a new vision this fiscal year.
That just happened a few weeks ago.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, they became their own division. They're currently in general administration this year. And so this is a visual for the current year FTE, which is a full-time equivalent. You may have multiple part-times that add up to a full-time position, and how they allocate across all of our divisions. So this gives you the picture of where staff is allocated citywide. Of course, the general administration is a large group of divisions that we just combined together. But then you see the next the highest staffing is police, followed by public works. A lot of services they provide. Then it is the fire, and then economic vitality. So you can see how we kind of split up those FTEs across the organization. Of course, some have different funding sources besides the general fund, and we'll dive deeper into general fund positions next in a couple of weeks. So that's kind of just a visual there for you. Here I wanted to give you a 5-year history of citywide by funds, where we've been seeing requests for personnel versus what we can afford to fund. When we approve positions, we'll have to fund them as an ongoing basis, so we need to make sure we have the ongoing revenue commitments. So this goes across all the funds that are requested in the last 5 years for those ongoing positions, showing you what was brought forward to the budget team to consider as versus what we were able to fund and approve on an annual basis. So primarily, if you look at the general fund, and that's where most of our resources we're talking about with the public safety sales tax potential, is where our fire, police, and emergency management are. So you can see that there's a lot of different needs and different requests within the general fund on an annual basis. We had 25 in 2021, approved 19. We had 19 requests, only could do 9, 46, only could approve 15. And then now, as we've gotten to these last 2 years, we're still getting the request to fund positions in the general fund, but it's been harder to fill those with those ongoing resources. So we've only approved 4 in the general fund the prior fiscal year, only 3.2 in the general fund this fiscal year. So we're really constrained in the general fund of what we can expand in capacity for staffing over the last couple of years. And now as we go into a potential recession, we're still seeing that as an issue that we'll have to manage. Let's see any others to pull out at this time. So I want to just talk about economic issues that we see as an organization. I'm not going into a lot of details, but there are several things that are weighing on our minds as we start to plan and build for the next budget cycle and funding public safety and all those other operations that we deliver. Our general fund sales tax has slowed down over the first quarter. We approximately a 3% decline in general fund sales tax year over year. One of the hardest hit areas is in our hotel areas. We're seeing our visitors are not coming to town. Our tourism.
International.
And international
It's
tourism.
an international
is
decrease
kind of-
right now, and then when you have a government shutdown on top of that, that's what's gonna happen.
We haven't seen the impacts of the
Yeah.
government shutdown yet either.
Yeah.
Retail sales, local retail sales is down. The online retail is good, but online local seems to be struggling a little bit. So there's a couple categories we're watching, and we're gonna bring council an update in December on that. The government shutdown, of course, that happened basically over the last month. We have not seen those returns and those impacts yet, but I'm pretty sure we'll see some impacts to our revenues. Inflation has leveled off, but it was high. Inflation was fast and hard for many years, which impacted a lot of our capital projects and delivering those capital projects to our community. Tariff impacts, we're trying to figure out how that's going to work. I try to listen to different economists, and they're on different sides of how tariffs will impact, countrywide, but I don't know about local. We'll keep looking at that. Federal budget bill impacts. So when the federal government adopts a budget, a lot of those things are related to income tax, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, those kind of things, and many other things were in that bill. So our state has analyzed what that impact is going to be locally, because that impacts, depending on what the state adopts for these deductions and exemptions, will impact our income tax, our state shared revenue income tax for our city. So we've been analyzing those impacts, and we do see some downfall. The state has an option to approve or not approve some of these tax measures, so it'll take time to figure out where they go with the budget bill deductions that have been approved. We're watching interest rates. Interest rates are good for our income investments, but as they come down, they'll help us on the bond issuances and those kind of things. What their impacts are on the local community and affordable housing will be impacted by interest rates. Housing affordability in the community is high with Flagstaff. One of the big impacts is in August, Santan Valley annexed them to a city, and that's a population of about 100,000 people that'll be added to the distribution of city shared sales tax, income tax, vehicle license tax. So our proportionate share is going to drop this year and going forward based on an annexation that was approved by their voters. So we're going to have to watch that and those impacts this year. It is going to have a negative impact. So those are just some high level economic issues. There's many other things going on that we are looking at. I do want to look at the building permits more. That's for sure. And then just a quick red, yellow, green pulse on our funds. We just kind of look at this as far as the health of on an ongoing basis for several funds. We budget within their allowable resources, but we see some impacts out in the future that can impact these. The general fund, we'll get more into that next week, but this went from a green to yellow based on those economic conditions that we're talking about. The Santan Valley, the budget income tax changes. We're concerned about those and how those will impact us in the future. Highway use, I'm just going to talk about some of these. Highway user revenue funds. That's one where the gas tax is not growing as fast as the expense to maintain roads. Gas tax is only on vehicles that take gas. When prices are low, we're better, people use more gas. But when prices rise, we go down. But it's kind of limited of what they receive in that. So that one's having some impact with growth and cost of delivering services. Library fund is yellow-green. That's a partnership we have with our county because they levy the secondary property tax. So as well as we can negotiate with them, that one is more green. We've been very successful these last couple of years. They don't have a lot of money for capital improvements though. That's one area where we have to help invest in our buildings for the organization. The Water Resource Infrastructure Protection Fund. This is one of those we'll talk about in the coming weeks. This is that wildland fire group. They have a rate based on municipal bills, water consumption, to protect our infrastructure in our community. We've seen this not grow as fast as our operating costs within their area, and their funding for capital replacement, their vehicles and stuff, are very limited with their resources under the current rate structure they have. Solid waste is one that we're struggling with as an enterprise fund. We had a big impact when we had our recycling company leave and close. The cost of recycling went up, so we're trying to balance that operation. That team is doing a great job trying to fit within their revenue sources that they have, but we are pretty concerned about those. And lastly is our airport fund. Again, we'll talk more about that one, the pros and cons, but this is a large airport. It's got a lot of maintenance needs in our community, but revenues are fairly flat. The advantage of getting another airline here in Flagstaff is huge, and we're putting lots of effort into making that happen. But until we get that second airline, we are actually having an impact that they need support from the general fund to deliver some of their maintenance and operating needs. And so we're here to help and support that fund as a general fund at this time. So that's just kind of the high level picture outlook of some of our funds in our organization that I thought I would share with you. I think that's it. Whew.
I guess we want to just.
You guys stayed awake, that's good.
Yeah, just check in with those with us if you have any other questions or if there's something that you want to bring up for future discussion as well.
Any thoughts as far as what you want to see as far as the general fund as we go into that details or?
Just one question. I went to a meeting at the Aquaplex a year ago or so, where we were given a presentation of the city's priority-based budgeting. And I was there along with, I think, 3 other people. So it wasn't heavily attended. My question is regarding this priority-based budgeting. I know the city does polling periodically to see what the citizens of the community think are the priorities in the community. And I'm just wondering how much of an impact does that polling actually play into how we actually budget our resources through that process?
So priority-based budgeting is a tool to understand how your resources are aligning with the priorities of the community. We went through an extensive process outreach, having community events, and we take council thoughts on priorities of what we want to do in our community, along with community to build our objectives, what we want to deliver. And so we use the programming for people to input their budget requests on the annual process. And that spits out kind of how those align with the priorities. Is it highly aligned with priority objectives versus less likely or less aligned with priorities? So we have that as a measuring tool that we use. Priority-based budgeting comes into better use, which I hope we don't have to, when you're in recession periods, to look at your lower quartile, the lower aligned objectives, and let's not put investments in there, or let's reduce investments. Let's focus on things. Now you're going to have mandatory things that you have to do that may not be a high priority or objective, but it gives you, if you have all that data in one place, you can look and measure what we can do and look at readjusting budget, decreasing, reappropriating, and that kind of stuff. So that's where the tool works more. We haven't had to use it to that level, but that's really gives a snapshot of how well we're doing against community values. Okay. Yep.
Anything online, Rick? So I think we're good for today. Thank you again for your presentation.
You're welcome.
We will have part 2 of financial outlook during our next scheduled meeting on December 3rd. And we'll be back at the other services building. So the building we were in our first meeting out on Route 66.
Same time?
At 3:30, yes.
Okay.
If you have any questions or need anything in the meantime, please let me know. We are working on a different way to maybe store our items so that'll be easier for you to get to as citizens and committee members. And so I will hopefully have an update for you on that on Friday. Okay? Thanks for being here.
And read this in the next 2 weeks.
No homework. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. That's all you have to do.
Yes, have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick, for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Thanks to everyone online. Have a good evening.
Thanks for sticking it out.